Alright, let's just get right into it. Should the Clippers be the favorites to come out of the West? The Clippers roster going into next season is Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, John Wall, Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, Terrence Mann, Iva Zubac, Reggie Jackson, Amir Coffey, Luke Kennard, and Brandon Boston. That roster as a whole is a very deep roster because you have the two superstars in Kawhi and PG. You have great complementary pieces in Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Batum, great bench pieces in Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, Amir Coffey, Luke Kennard, and they brought in John Wall the season after the Rockets bought him out, which helped the Clippers because they needed a better playmaker. Because Reggie Jackson, he's not a bad playmaker, but Wall is definitely better, and he can set up Kawhi, PG for easier looks. Now, this isn't the John Wall from when he first got to Houston or maybe his last good years in Washington. This is a player that is not who he once was, but he's still a very good player on a contending roster. He can get you 15 points, maybe even 17 points per game while giving you good playmaking. Now, there are still concerns with his outside shooting. He has never been a great outside shooter for the entirety of his career, but he has become a corner three-point shooter. So when PG or Kawhi gets dribble penetration, they can kick it out to him in the corner, and he can make it at a high rate. Or let's say one of them gets doubled, and somebody else gets the ball and then swings at the wall in the corner. He can hit that off the catch. So he provides that. There's also concerns about his defense because he hasn't played basketball in, I believe, 2 years. So how is he going to look on the defensive end side of the ball? And the last time he played, Wall looked okay, and that was on a team that wasn't really competing for anything, so maybe it wasn't showing the best of effort. But now with a team that's going to compete for a championship and a coach that's going to require him to give effort on defense, I expect Wall to be a decent defender. He won't be the defender he was in his prime years or anything like that, but he'll definitely won't be a liability. And not to mention the Clippers have so many good wing defenders as is. If he's not that great and they just have to hide him on somebody, they are perfectly capable of doing that. Now, comparing their rosters to some of the other best teams in the West, I would say the roster is definitely better than the Grizzlies roster, the Nuggets roster, the Mavs roster, the Timberwolves roster, the Pelicans roster. The Pelicans are a really deep team, but I would still think the Clippers are the better team. Now for the Warriors, they brought back the same team. They re-signed Kevon Looney. They added Dante DiVincenzo in free agency. And I really like that pickup for them. I think that was one of the more underrated signings of free agency. And in the draft, they took Patrick Baldwin Jr. with their first-round pick, and I believe they took Ryan Rollins in the second. And then they give Lester Quinones a two-way deal. But those guys probably won't be getting much minutes on the roster, especially in playoff time. Jordan Poole could take a jump this year. I could see him taking another jump, improving his efficiency, increasing his points per game, even his assists per game. And Clay finally has a full offseason where he can just focus on improving his game instead of rehabbing from an injury. Will Clay be the Clay he was before the ACL injury in the 2019 finals? Probably not. But if he can get to 80 or 85% of what Clay used to be, that makes that Warriors team very scary. The Warriors have Kuminga come back for a second year, and they finally have Wiseman back from his injury. And I expect both of them to make an impact this season with, some of the veterans leaving, like Otto Porter, Payton II, leaving the Warriors to go to Portland. And looking how the Clippers and Warriors roster looks right now, I would say that I would take the Clippers roster over the Warriors roster right now slightly. But in my opinion, as of right now, those are definitely the two best teams in the West. So if the Clippers stay healthy and everybody meshes well, I could see the Clippers beating the Warriors in the conference finals and making it out of the West. I appreciate you watching the video. If you could like the video, I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. More content on the way.